This week on the show, we have OpenBSD on the Microsoft Surface Go, the FreeBSD Foundation August newsletter, and what's taking so long with Project Trident, people have asked, and package source config file versioning as a result of Google Summer of Code projects, as well as macOS 10 remnants in ZFS code in this week's episode of BSD Now. BSD Now, episode 262, OpenBSD Surfacing, recorded on September 5th, 2018. Hello, I'm your host, Benedikt Reuschling.
And I'm Alan Jude.
And we have a wonderful new month for you, as well as a couple of new BSD Now shows for you, of course. And conference season is upon us, so we'll do a couple of pre-recordings, but this one is still live and starts with the following headlines. OpenBSD on the Microsoft Surface Go, in case you're wondering where the title came from.
Yep. So this is a post from an OpenBSD user who got it running on their Microsoft Surface Go. They say, for some reason, I like small laptops and the constraints they place on me, as long as they're still usable. I used my old Dell Mini 9 for a long time back in the netbook days, and was recently using an 11-inch MacBook Air as my primary development machine for the last few years. Recently, Microsoft announced a smaller, cheaper version of its Surface tablet called the Surface Go, which piqued my interest. So, looking at the hardware, the Surface Go is available in two hardware configurations, one with 4 gigs of RAM and a 64 gig eMMC, and another with 8 gigs of RAM and 128 gig NVMe, which will be a lot faster. So they went for the latter, because if you're doing development, you probably want a bit more RAM. And if you're using the file system, you probably want NVMe rather than eMMC. Both of these ship with an Intel Pentium Gold 4415Y processor, which is not very fast, but it's certainly usable. You know, you want something with low power to make the battery last. The tablet measures 9.65 inches across, is 6.9 inches tall, and 0.3 inches thick, giving it a 10-inch diagonal 3:2 aspect ratio touchscreen covered in Gorilla Glass with a resolution of 1800 by 1200, which is a slightly weird resolution, but better than something lower. The bezel is quite large, so that's the bit around the edge of the screen that isn't screen, especially with such a small screen, but it makes sense on a device that is meant to be held onto, because you want places to hold onto the device where you're not pressing buttons all the time.
Yeah.
So then the keyboard and touchpad are located on a separate removable slab called the Surface Go Signature Type cover, which is sold separately. I opted for the cobalt blue cover, which has a soft cloth-like material. The cover attaches magnetically along the bottom edge of the device and presents a USB-attached keyboard and touchpad device. When the cover is folded up against the screen, it sends the ACPI sleep signal and is held to the screen magnetically. During normal use, the cover can be positioned flat on a surface or slightly raised up about 3/4 of an inch near the screen for better ergonomics. When using the device as a tablet, the cover can be rotated behind the screen and, folded over, which causes it to automatically stop sending keyboard and touchpad events until you rotate it back. So when you fold the keyboard around the back of the device, pressing the buttons doesn't do anything, because that would be annoying.
Yeah.
The keyboard has a decent amount of key travel and a good layout, with the home and page up, page down being accessible using the function keys plus the arrow keys, but also has dedicated home and page up, page down keys on the F9 through F12 keys, which I find quite useful since keyboard layout is somewhat small. By default, the F1 through F12 keys do not send the F keys. They're used as your regular media keys. But if you hold function, you can use them, and there is a function lock ability so that you can make it always be the function keys if you really want. But that annoyingly keeps a bright function LED illuminated to let you know that the function lock is on. The keys are backlit with 3 levels of adjustment handled by the keyboard using the F7 key. The touchpad on the type cover is a Windows Precision touchpad connected as a USB human interface device. It has a decent click feel, but when the cover is angled up against instead of flat on a surface, it sounds a bit hollow and cheap. They also have a Surface Go pen. So the touchscreen is powered by the Elantec chip connected using human interface device over I2C or I2C, which means it also supports the pen input. A Surface Pen digitizer is available separately from Microsoft and comes in the same colors as the covers. The pen works without any pairing necessary, though the top button on it works over Bluetooth, so it requires pairing to be able to use. Either way, the pen requires a quadruple A battery inside of it to be able to operate. The Surface Pen can attach magnetically to the left side of the screen so that you lose it. There's also a kickstand, can swing out behind the display and to use the tablet in a more laptop form factor, which can adjust to any angle up to 170 degrees. The kickstand stays firmly in place whenever it's in position, which also means it requires a bit of force to pull it out when it's initially setting it up on the desk. But along the top of the display, there are the power buttons and physical volume rocker buttons. Along the right side, you have your 3.5-inch or 3.5 millimeter headphone jack, a USB-C port, power input, and micro SD card slot, and the kickstand. Charging can be done via USB-C PD or with the dedicated charge port, which accommodates a magnetically attached thin barrel similar to the older MagSafe connectors on a Mac. And the charging cable has a white LED that glows when connected, which is, again, kind of annoying, being near the midline of the screen rather than down by the keyboard. Although, unlike Apple's MagSafe, the indicator light does not indicate whether the battery is charged or not. The barrel charger plug can be placed up or down, but in either direction, I find it puts an awkward strain on the power cable coming out of it because of the vertical position. Anyway, wireless is provided by an Atheros QCA 6174, which provides 802.11 AC and Bluetooth. And most of the sensors work, such as the gyroscope and the ambient light sensor. The firmware menu can be enabled by holding down the volume up button and pressing the power button, and then releasing the volume up when the menu appears. Secure boot as well as various hardware components can be disabled in the menu so that you can install OpenBSD.
Hey, very nice. And, yeah, that's a good thing to have.
Yep, they also walk through the steps of installing OpenBSD, and then there's also some follow-up posts where they talk about various issues they run into and how they worked around them.
Oh yeah, excellent. That's something people can dig into it in case they want to try something like that.
So they have a support summary here at the end saying the AC power works. The ambient light sensor seems to require a new driver and isn't working very well. Audio works, battery status works. The Bluetooth doesn't attach to a driver in FreeBSD right now, or sorry, in OpenBSD, and can be disabled in the BIOS to save battery. The camera does not appear to work. Hibernation does work. The micro SD card slot is Realtek and works. The SSD is a Toshiba NVMe and is working. The Surface Pen works. Suspend Resume works. Touchscreen is good. The USB keyboard via the cover and the touchpad both work. USB-C works for data and charging. It uses the Intel DRM KB Lake driver, so video is good. The volume buttons work, and currently the wireless is not working on OpenBSD, but they note that FreeBSD has a work in progress port of the Atheros 10K from Linux, which is ISC licensed, and that means that the wireless might work soon.
Oh, excellent. Yeah. For especially such a device, wireless would be good to have.
And
all right.
To answer the chat room, no, they don't mention what they get for battery life yet. Although it looks like they've only had it for about a week, so it can be very hard to tell.
But yeah, certainly nice for traveling around with it, to do some small bits of work here and there on OpenBSD.
Like, I can definitely see the tablet type computer useful for a number of things, but most of those things I could probably do on my phone. And if I need something bigger, I probably be better served with a regular laptop.
Yeah.
But some people like something that small.
Yeah, it's the middle thing between laptop or phone. And yeah, I mean, I wouldn't do programming on a pad or a Surface thing.
It has a keyboard, but even then,
it's different. Yeah,
I'm spoiled though. Like, I can barely develop on a laptop. I need my 4K monitor and my giant loud keyboard to be able to get anything done.
Yeah,
I'm slowly getting better at being a road warrior.
Yeah, it's not for everyone. I mean, people need the silence at home to concentrate and program. But yeah, people can do it on the road. It's
for me, it's mostly just getting comfortable and having enough stuff.
Yeah. Okay, speaking of enough stuff, we have headlines as well from the FreeBSD Foundation update. That's the August issue. And it starts off, so we have introduced this design. We started that off, I think, the last month. So this is the second time. And here's the message from the executive director, Deb Goodkin. Dear FreeBSD community member, it's been a busy summer for the foundation. From traveling around the globe, spreading the word about FreeBSD, to bringing in new team members to improve the project's continuous integration work. We're very excited about what we've accomplished. Take a minute to check out the latest updates within our foundation-sponsored projects. Read more about our advocacy efforts in Bangladesh and community building in Cambridge. And don't miss the upcoming travel grant deadlines. Well, those are about to end soon, September 7. In time you watch this episode, it's probably out, but they are still there by the time you watch this live recording.
So, make sure you get on top of those.
Yeah. And we have a couple of developer summits also coming up. That's here, our upcoming events section here on the right. And be sure to find out how your support by donating will ensure the progress continues into the next year, because that makes it sustainable. Okay, so that's the introductory part. The August 2018 development project update by Ed Mast is basically reminiscing or summarizing the embedded device USB target work that's been done. So that's been finished now. So this month, he writes, he's looking back at some work the foundation sponsored last year and how it ties into this year's work to improve the out-of-the-box experience on embedded targets. So that we covered already in the April 2017 development update, that FreeBSD now runs on many embedded boards that can connect to a USB host. So that's the USB on-the-go or OTG interface. And the host may run Windows, macOS 10, Linux, FreeBSD, Android, or another operating system with the embedded device appearing as a USB peripheral. So originally, the types of target peripherals supported by FreeBSD was somewhat limited. And so Edward Napirala got a project grant in 2017, and that project added USB mass storage support using the Common Access Method, or CAM in FreeBSD terms. That target layer allowing FreeBSD target to export an image file as if it were a mass storage device, like a flash drive. And so this work provided needed infrastructure and was usable as is, although the interface used to set up a device image was still somewhat cumbersome. And earlier this year, Edward completed another sponsored project to better integrate and simplify the use of all the types of USB targets, including mass storage. So if you want to hook up your external drive to it, then this is possible. And this project basically made USB target configuration a runtime configuration setting and added startup scripts to simplify the use of the USB target mode. And the configuration and use of the new scripts is fully documented in the FreeBSD handbook as well. That is part of the contract that the developers sign up to when they do a project fund, so that it's also documented so that people know how to use it afterwards. Mm-hmm. And the result of these two projects is available in the upcoming FreeBSD 12.0 release. We also have updates from the fundraising side. Ziplink, which specializes in optimizing wireless links, WANs, or wireless, wide area networks, or any network that experiences high latency, asymmetric allocation, or high bit error rates. They became recently a silver sponsor or silver partner for the FreeBSD Foundation. Thank you very much for those. They now join a growing list of companies like NetApp, Microsoft, Tarsnap, VMware, and NeoSmart Technologies that are stepping up and showing their commitment to FreeBSD. And with that amount of work, they provide a lot of things that the foundation couldn't do without that monetary contribution. So that's pretty much listed here. And we also
an update from the release engineering team on the work to get FreeBSD 12.0 out, which is still ongoing, as you might know. There's a nice recap from BSD Cam where's the byline? It's much longer than I thought it was.
Yeah, it's a bit longer.
Very good summary by Deb, talking about all the things that happened at the summit. It was, most of us were there for most of a week, so quite a bit happened.
That was certainly an event of its own and well worth attending.
Mm-hmm.
And there's also the FreeBSD Developer Summit call for participation for the upcoming conferences that are scheduled to happen throughout the rest of the year. So in October 2018, there's the FreeBSD Developer and Vendor Summit on the Thursday before MeetBSD. So that's October 18. And the summit will be held in conjunction with MeetBSD, so basically in the same room or rooms. Developers can register using the link below if they haven't done so already. And there's a little fee here of $75 for each attendee to actually cover the lunch during the summit, and the rest is sponsored by the foundation. So if you're going to MeetBSD, you might as well spend an extra day with us doing developing or talking about developing and upcoming things that we plan for upcoming releases. So we also have our board member, Philip Paps, going to a lot of conferences that are not typically in the spotlight of major efforts, but it's good to have people there as well. So there's Sanok 32 and COSCUP 2018, and he went to both of them. So Sanok is in Bangladesh and COSCUP is in Taipei, and he's basically showing presence of FreeBSD and engaging people in the area to also become contributors of various kinds, handing out material, flyers, stickers. They were always popular around the world. Wherever we go with the stickers, we don't leave with stickers in our bags because they all go out and people take them. So we also sponsor these events, so a little bit of support for these conferences to make them happen from the foundation. And he presented on using FreeBSD on ARM64 at both conferences, and at Sanok, he taught a workshop on hardening servers using jails and PF, and presented a brief introduction to ZFS. Hey, that's great. Yeah, so maybe that hardening servers workshop would be also good to have in other areas of the world. I mean, this is pretty much a universal topic to have.
Yeah, and in September and October, Philip will be in Sudan at the Sudanese Network Operator Group and at Tonga Cert in Tonga.
Oh yeah, that's also an interesting spot. And the letter closes with the MeetBSD 2018 travel grant application. As I said, September 7th is the deadline. And if you want to apply for a travel grant to MeetBSD, if you just need a little bit of money to get there and want to meet the BSD folks, what better way to use that travel grant? And hurry up, it's September 7th when the deadline is, and afterwards it's closed. You cannot get a new grant or a grant at all. And then we'll decide on the number of people that are going. And what do you have to lose? The only thing is that you get the grant or don't get the grant. So you might as well apply. And that pretty much closes the newsletter. Again, if you're interested in the work that the FreeBSD Foundation is doing, then check on our newsletter, and donations are always welcome. We are looking for big and small donations, doesn't matter, and every little bit can make a difference. So, news roundup this week starts with Project Trident. Remember last episode? That was already a little bit of a glimpse into the Trident future. But this one asks, what's taking so long?
Yeah, they told us we would have something by the end of August.
Yeah, no pressure there, but it's good to ask. And this is what is covered on the project-trident.org website. And the big headline is, well, what is taking so long?
The short answer is it's complicated. Project Trident is quite literally a test of the new TrueOS build system. As expected, there have been quite a few bugs, undocumented features, and other optional bits that we discovered we needed that were not initially present. All of these things have been addressed and retested in a constant back and forth process. While Ken and JT are both experienced developers, neither of them has done this kind of release engineering before. JT has done some release engineering back in his Linux days, but the TrueOS and FreeBSD build system are very different. Both Ken and JT are learning a completely new way of building a FreeBSD/TrueOS distribution. Please keep in mind that no one has used this new TrueOS build system before. So Ken and JT are, want to not only provide a good Trident release, but also provide a model and a template on how other people can use the TrueOS build system to make their own distribution.
Yeah, because that is actually one of the goals that other people can build upon their work.
Yeah, I've been playing with Poudre image to build releases, and I'm really liking it. And I think going forward, I would like to rebuild the FreeBSD release building system into that. I don't know what everybody else thinks of that idea, but it definitely doesn't have to replace the FreeBSD release one. But I'd like to be able to build as close as possible to what is a FreeBSD release from Poudre, because it's so much nicer doing it in a nice clean jail and so on.
Yeah, without any other stuff around it. But yeah, back to the article. The next question is, where are we now?
Through perseverance, trial and error, and a lot of head scratching, we reached the point of having successful builds. It took a while to get there, but now we are simply waiting out a few bugs with the new installer that Ken wrote, as well as finding and fixing all the new Xorg configuration options, which recently landed in FreeBSD as part of the update of Xorg. We also found that a number of services have been removed or replaced between TrueOS 1803 and 1806, and so those needed to be adjusted in their port of switching over to OpenRC. And they needed to adjust what they consider the base services for a desktop. All of these issues have been resolved, and we are continually rebuilding and pulling in new patches from TrueOS as soon as they are committed. In the meantime, we have made an early beta available for Trident, available to users in the Telegram channel if they really want to try it out that early.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, and do you foresee any other delays?
At the moment, we're doing many iterations of testing and tweaking the install ISO and the package configuration in order to ensure that all the critical functionality works out of box, like networking, sound, video, basic apps, etc. While we do not foresee any other major delays, sometimes things happen that are outside of our control. As an example, one of the recent delays that hit recently was completely unexpected. We had a hard drive failure on our build server. Up until recently, the aptly named Poseidon build server had been running on Micron M500 DC drives, but that drive is now constantly reporting errors. Despite ordering a replacement Western Digital Blue SSD several weeks ago, we just received it this past week. The drive is now installed with the builder back in full functionality, but we also lost many precious days because of the delay. Need more mirrors.
Yep.
The build server for Project Trident is very similar to the one that JT donated to the TrueOS project. JT, in fact, has another DL580G7, so he donated one of those to the Project Trident for their build server. Poseidon now has 256 gigabytes of RAM. That's 64 4 gigabyte sticks, which is a smidge higher than what the TrueOS builder actually has. Since we were talking about hardware, we probably should address another question we get often. What hardware are the devs testing this on? So let's Look at that.
So here's the developer hardware.
Do you want to answer the first one?
Oh, sure. So JT has as his main test box a custom-built Intel i7 7700K system running a meager 32 gigabytes of RAM and dual Intel Optane 900P drives and an NVIDIA 1070 GTX with 4K Acer monitors.
No,
because
four 4K monitors.
Four of them. Yeah, so monitoring all over. He has used a Lenovo X250 ThinkPad alongside a desk full of X230Ts and X220 ThinkPads, and one of which he gave away at Southeast Linux Fest this year, which you can read about in the link provided. And however, it's not done. So there, being a complete hardware hoarder, JT also tests on several Intel NUCs and his second laptop, a Fujitsu T904, not to mention a plethora of HP DL580 servers, a DL980 server, and a stack of BL485C, BL460C, and BL490C blades in his HP C7000 and C3000 Blade Center chassis. That's the usual thing that you have at home. Maybe it's time for an intervention of this hardware collection habits.
Yeah.
Everyone needs a hub.
He's got a bit more stuff than I do in his garage.
Yeah, and he uses that. It's not just collecting dust. It's in putting it to good use.
It's turning electricity into heat. So Ken, for a laptop, has his third generation X1 Carbon and an old EEE PC T101MT. Which is dual-core 1 gigahertz and 2 gigabytes of memory, which is very useful for testing how it works on lower-end hardware. As far as workstation goes, his office computer is an Intel i7 with an NVIDIA GTX 960, running 3 4K monitors. I thought I was, pretty high up there with my one 4K monitor and a second 1080p monitor, but these guys have a lot of monitors.
Yeah, it's needed. Yeah.
And he has a couple of other custom-built workstations, including an AMD and another Intel with an NVIDIA card. Generally, he assembles random workstations built out of hardware that he can acquire cheaply.
Makes sense.
I will note that these guys need to run this stuff through a spell checker. Anyway, Tim, who's also helping out with the project, has a third-gen X1 Carbon as well, and a custom-built desktop using an i5 4440, 16 gigs of RAM, and NVIDIA graphics card. And Rod, no one knows what Rod uses. How many licks does it take to get to the center of a Tootsie Pop?
Well, yeah, we'll maybe we know in the future, or he has some very high-tech stuff, high-end. Okay, so that's the article, and we definitely look forward to Project Trident being released. It takes as long as it takes, as much bug fixing as done up ahead, the less bugs are in the final versions. So that's my take on that. Next up, we have something from the NetBSD Google Summer of Code. They have a package source config file versioning now. And so they have an actual series of reports from the course of the summer in this Google Summer of Code project. So this period is pretty much over now, but it's interesting to see what students came up with. And the goal of this project is to integrate a VCS, like a version control system, your CVS, Subversion, your Git, whatever it is, to make managing local changes to config files for packages easier. And that's
right. So you have a mail server installed. I think they use Spam Assassin as an example. You have spamd installed, and then you upgrade it, and now there's some new config parameters, but your config file doesn't have them. Well, if the package just installs the new default config file, it undoes all your settings. But the newer version might not run off your config file from the older version. And, you don't want to have to manually do it all. How do we merge the changes?
Yeah. Good task to give a student to work over that over the summer. And that's more details in the NetBSD blog here by Leonardo Takari. And starting with preparing these packages, or packages may install code, both machine executable and interpreted programs, documentation and manual pages, source headers, shared libraries, and other resources such as graphics elements, sounds, fonts, document templates. That's pretty much kind of stuff in the package source repo, translations, config files, a combination of them. And so all these config files are usually the means through which the behavior of software without a user interface is specified. And this covers parts of the operating systems, the network daemons, the programs in general that don't come in an interactive graphical or textual interface as the principal mean for setting options, which is a thing that is very convenient to have. But if there's no such thing, then it's getting more difficult. But system-wide configuration for operating system software tends to be kept under /etc, while configuration for software installed via package source, because it's third-party software, ends up under local base /etc. For example, /user/package/etc, because the BSDs are clean and put stuff where it should be separated from the operating system config files. Software packaged as part of package source provides example configuration files, if there are any, which usually get extracted to local base /share/examples/package base. And don't worry, automatic merging is disabled by default. You can set the VCS auto merge variable to enable that. And in order to avoid breakage, install configuration is backed up first in the VCS, separating the user-modified files from files that have been already automatically merged in the past, and in order to allow the administrator to easily restore the last manually edited file in case of a breakage. So you can retry that with the old config. VCS functionality only applies to configuration files, not RCD scripts, and only if the environment variable $no VCS is unset.
Right. So if you set no VCS, it will not do any of this.
Yeah, that will ignore completely all the new things. The version control system to be used as a backend can be set through $VCS, and if it defaults to RCS, the version control system, which works only locally and doesn't support atomic transactions, it's a start, but yeah.
Yeah, RCS is kind of the underlaying bits that came before CVS. So it's really old.
Mm. And other backends such as CVS are supported and will come. These being used as the explicit request of the administrator need to be already installed and placed in the directory part of your path variable.
Right. So I think RCS is included in the base system in NetBSD, and that's why it's the default. But if you install CVS or Git or whatever, you can use that. And at that point back in July, only RCS and I think CVS were supported. But as the project went on, it added the other ones, and you'll see that in the additional entries.
Yeah. So that's the next entry here, because there's an update on that project. So package source is now able to deploy configuration from packages being installed from a remote site-specific VCS repository. User-modified files are always tracked even if the auto-merge functionality is not enabled, and the new tool, package conf track, exists to manually store user changes made outside of package upgrade time.
So you can check in changes you made to the config file at any time, so that the next time you do an upgrade, it will merge them for you.
No, that's convenient. And yeah, version control software is executed as the same user running package_add or make install, unless the user is root. In this case, a separate unprivileged user, package VCS conf, gets created with its own home directory and a working logging shell, but no password. And with the home directory being set not being strictly necessary for this one, it exists to facilitate the migrations between repositories and VCS changes. It also serves to store keys used to access remote repositories. Yeah, so separate user, separation of privileges, that's always good to have. And now using Git instead of RCS is simply done by setting VCS equals Git in package_install.conf. And then you have different versions.
By the second report in their project here, they had Git working in addition to CVS and RCS.
Ah, that's what people are looking for, I guess. Yeah, and in the next report, they say that configuration file versioning in package source part 3, that now remote repositories also work with SVN and Mercurial.
Yep, and they show how to do that. If you're interested, you can go read about that.
Mm-hmm. Then they have a part 4 that says configuration, deployment, package tools, and the future. Support for configuration tracking is in scripts, package install scripts that get built into binary packages and are run by package_add upon the installation. The idea behind the proposal suggested that users of a new feature should be able to store revisions of their installed configuration files and of package provided default, both in local or remote repositories. So with this capability in place, it doesn't take much to make the script pull the configuration from a VCS repository at the install time. And that's what the setting VCS conf pull equals yes in package_install conf after having enabled VCS config_conf does. So you are free to use official third-party pre-built packages that have no customizations in them, enable these options, and point package source to a private conf repo. And if that contains custom configuration for the software you are installing, an attempt is made to use it and install it on your system. And if that fails, package install will fall back to using the defaults that come inside the package. RC scripts are always deployed from the binary package, and if they exist, and package_rcd_scripts equals yes is set in package install conf, or the environment variable.
Right. So this means that you can now, if you have many servers using package source, you can say, hey, go over here in Git or Subversion or Mercurial and get the configuration file that I've already customized for that version.
Yeah, this is for our environment at the company. This is for my own private environment. So that's a different repo. And that makes it much more likely that people run these their own configurations because they need some maybe LDAP support for a company or something. So that's typically done in a custom package. And this will be part of packages, not a separate solution like configuration management tools. It doesn't support running scripts on the target system to customize the installation. It doesn't come with its domain-specific language. It won't run as a daemon or require remote logins to work. It's quite limited in scope, but you can define a role for your system in package_install or in the environment, and package source will look for configuration that you or your organization crafted for such a role, like public standalone web server versus reverse proxy or a node in the database cluster. There are a lot of possibilities. Yeah, that's cool.
It's interesting to think of building more of that into the operating system and not requiring something as heavyweight as Ansible or Salt or Puppet.
Yeah, because these are basic tasks, like every operating system needs a certain set of base packages installed, and why not customize them and pre-build them in your own environment so you just have to pull them down from a network server in your local LAN.
Yep. So now we have an interesting tidbit of history from our friend Chris Seibenman. A little bit of the one-time macOS version of ZFS still lingers in the source code.
Yeah, way back when they tried to port that to macOS and had actually good progress on that. They
successfully ported it to Apple and then didn't end up using it. It's really one of the biggest shames in the history of computing. But anyway, once upon a time, Apple came very close to releasing ZFS as part of macOS 10. Apple did this work on its own copy of the ZFS source tree, as far as anyone knows. But people at Sun knew about it, and it turns out, even today, there's still a little bit of lingering signs of hope for the perhaps prepared for ZFS port in the ZFS source tree. Well, sort of. It's not quite in code. But lurking in the function that reads ZFS directories and turns a ZFS directory entry, a ZAP, into a file system independent format that the kernel wants. For VFS, it says, object number equals ZFS dirent object, which is a macro, and you give it the zap.first integer. And basically it gets the object number of the file that is being looked up. And it says macOS 10 can extract the object type here, such as, type equals dirent type. So specifically, this is in ZFS_readdir and ZFS vnops.c. So ZFS maintains file type information in directories. This information can't be used on Solaris and thus Illumos, where the overall kernel doesn't have this in its file system independent directory entry format. but it can be used on OS 10, like Darwin, because macOS is among the Unixes that supports a D_type. So you can actually, as part of the file system, indicate what type of a file the file is. The comment itself dates all the way back to a commit in 2007, which includes the change, reserve bits in directory entry for file type. So they added support in ZFS to deal with that extra type field. And that created this whole setup. It says, Chris says, I don't know if this file type support was added specifically to help Apple in their OS 10 port, but it's certainly possible. And in 2007, it seems likely that this port was at least in the minds of the ZFS developers. It's interesting, but understandable that FreeBSD didn't seem to have influenced them in the same way, at least as far as comments in the source code go. This file type support is equally useful on FreeBSD, and the FreeBSD ZFS port dates back to about 2007 as well. Regardless of the exact reason that ZFS picked up maintaining the file type information in the directory entries, it's quite useful for people using both FreeBSD and Linux that it's there. File type information is useful for any number of things, and the ZFS file systems can and do provide this information to those other Unixes, which helps make ZFS feel like a truly first-class file system, one that supports all of the expected general file system features.
Oh, yeah. That's very cool. There's a little bit of code in there still, a little comment. Well, we'll see. Maybe in the future they figure out, well, Apple file systems isn't that great, so they should go back to something that actually is tried and true and is used around the world in production servers.
And Jörg Lundman, who maintains the OpenZFS on OS 10 port, links specifically, he says, for completeness sake, here's where we actually set the D_type in the extended reader support on the OS 10 port of OpenZFS. So you can actually see where they're making use of that.
Yeah. Well, and there's still a port for OpenBSD for OpenZFS on macOS 10. So if people are experimental, they can try it out. It should work apparently.
Yeah, it works very well. The my Mac has it. It's maintained and kept very up to date. Lots of people use it. It's harder to use it as your root file system, but it's a great way to store a bunch of files on your Mac in such a way that you can ZFS send them to other places. And if FreeBSD had better support for the keyboard and trackpad on my Mac, I would even dual boot my Mac.
Yeah. That's a little bit of an issue, but yeah, it's coming. We will see something in the future, maybe. And who knows what the future of OpenZFS will be on these different operating systems. It's interesting to see.
Yep.
So, time for the Beastie Bits this week. And speaking of migrations between operating system, this one we have here is a Mac-like FreeBSD laptop, very similar to a really Mac.
Yeah, so they say, this is a tour of my FreeBSD laptop. I've set a goal of configuring a Unix laptop with focused and effective user interface, suitable for all types of work. My point of reference was a 13-inch Retina MacBook Pro from 2015. So they've actually configured their FreeBSD machine to look like a Mac.
Yeah, on the first view, it's like, oh, that's familiar. The taskbar and icons on the screen, of course, background images can be copied. But there's a little beastie down there in the lower right corner.
And they walk through how they do that and some of the other things they do, including doing rsync backups of their UFS file system.
Mm-hmm.
I guess if you're pretending to be like a Mac, you have to pretend you don't have ZFS.
Yeah. Yep, but once you've done ZFS send a couple of times, then you don't want to miss that wire speed power of transfers. But visually it's cool.
What's missing for them, and so on.
Yeah, very nice. People are imitating good design, I guess. And yeah,
they say.
in case you just wanted
within the context of my daily desktop tasks, FreeBSD running on the ThinkPad X1 Yoga subjectively performs as fast as the MacBook Pro of an equivalent generation, if not even faster. There are no freezes, reboots, or other disturbances. The sleep and resume functions work seamlessly. The battery life is about 5 hours, depending on the task, which is not as good as MacBook Pro. However, if you've ever seen the inside of a MacBook Pro, you tell it's all battery. And potentially there's improvements to the battery life via using more power management tools and so on.
Okay.
But sounds like they're quite happy with FreeBSD.
Yeah, best of both worlds. Next thing is SyncThing on FreeBSD. That's the proper pronunciation.
Yep.
It's, of course, from Vermaiden or Vermaden. I need to figure out the proper pronunciation at one point.
It's Polish, so I don't know.
Blogging each week something for us. That's or at least not just exclusively for us, but for people out there. And this one talks about SyncThing on FreeBSD.
Yes, I know SyncThing works quite well because they use it in the FreeBSD cluster. I think is how we get the package mirrors synced out, is using SyncThing.
Okay. So that's a little bit of a prep work to configure the hosts. And then...
but in general, SyncThing is, I guess, the best way to describe it would be a Dropbox-like thing between your own machines. It lets you sync files from between a bunch of your machines and so on. It seems really nice.
So no rsync. You just drop it in one directory and all the other machines get it?
Yeah, except for it does it two-way better than rsync can.
Yeah, of course.
Right. So
cool.
There's access to files on many of the machines.
Yeah, with a web interface. And cool article as always, with a lot of info and screenshots.
Yeah, if it's something that's interests you, definitely check it out. It covers how to set it up and all the tweaking.
And we have a new ZFS boot environments tool, also by Vermaden, documented here. If you remember, he originally started the BEADM tool on the FreeBSD forums. At least that's where he promoted it.
There was a manage BE script, and then so he created BEADM and tried to make it more like the
Solaris one.
The Solaris one, which I guess was and then there was a fork for making a version that supported the separate boot pool, and a fork with support for Linux, and then those were all pushed back into his thing, and you get it all set up, and he has his original thread. There's also a Python tool called Zenv, Zedenv, which does a bunch of that.
But this new tool is something separate from all these, but it's building upon the functionality that they provided.
So he says that at the Polish BSD user group meeting number 3, Paweł Dołek, who did the original port of ZFS to FreeBSD, suggested that he should try to get the BEADM tool into the FreeBSD-based system. And when he created the PR about that is when he first learned about BECTL, the summer code project I helped run last year, to basically make a C version of BEADM. And he says that he will, of course, maintain and update the BEADM tool still, and it'll be available via FreeBSD ports, because having such a tool written in POSIX shell allows fast debugging and easy changes. But the BECTL tool is basically just a C reimplementation of BEADM. They're designed to have the same command interface and so on, and be easy to swap back and forth between them. And it's already built in, starting with FreeBSD 12 Alpha 2.
Oh, yeah. That's around the corner. Yeah, it's coming, and people can use it.
Yeah, he found a bug where using the BECTL rename feature didn't deal with the fact if the boot environment you're trying to rename was mounted, but we've since fixed that. It was just... basically adding the flag similar to -u when you do a rename. And so that's fixed now.
Excellent. So this will be part of 12, and no one will notice that there was a difference there. So I guess this is now becoming the de facto tool for boot environment creation and management.
That's hopefully the case, yep.
Ah, very nice. And the next item we have is that my system's time was so wrong that even NTPD didn't work. Oh dear. What could be wrong with that clock? Oh, this is
I think
over.
the default NTPD will not shift your time zone if it's more than 1,000 seconds out of date, which can definitely happen in VMs if you pause the VM and things like that.
Yeah.
But you there's an extra flag you can pass to NTPD to deal with that, or you can use something like NTP date first and force sync the time.
Sure. And that's the description here in the article, how you would do that, and in case you encounter this problem. And well, of course, there are other NTP daemons to sync your clock, but for NTPD, there's a couple of things that.
So I think in particular, they're using OpenBSD, so that's OpenNTPD. So it has a feature called a constraint check, where it will connect to a well-known public server like google.com or something like that, and look at the date stamp in the HTTPS response. And using that, it can make sure that the NTP server isn't lying to you. So it doesn't use the date stamp from Google because that won't be accurate within a couple of seconds, really. But using it to do a sanity check on what the NTP server is telling you, so that a rogue NTP server can't lie to you and tell you, it's 2 years ago or something. The problem they ran into is their clock was so out of sync that they couldn't make the TLS connection because the certificate from Google was only valid starting, 6 months ago. And if your time is 2 years ago, you're saying, well, the certificate you're presenting is from the future. It's not valid
I cannot
yet.
Possibly use that. Yeah.
And so it couldn't do the constraint check either to verify that the time server wasn't making things up.
Deadlock here. Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's it's good to know that there are workarounds for this and people can actually set the proper time on their machines. Okay, then we have OpenSSH 7.8 or 7.8 patch level 1 available as of the 24th of August 2018. And over at OpenSSH, you can find the release notes for that.
Yep. One of the big changes is that SSH-keygen now uses the OpenSSH format for private keys by default, rather than the old OpenSSL PEM format. The OpenBSD format supported in OpenSSH since 2014 and described in the protocol.key file in the source offers substantially better protection against offline password guessing and supports key comments in private keys. If necessary, you can still generate the old type by adding the -m PEM flags to the SSH keygen.
Oh, okay.
SSHD has removed internal support for S/key multi-factor authentication. You can still use it via PAM or BSD auth. It's just not going to be part of SSH itself. SSH, the client, removed vestigial support for running SSH as setuid. This used to be required for host-based authentication and the long gone rhost style authentication, but it's not been necessary for a very long time. Attempting to execute SSH as a setuid binary or with a UID that's not your effective UID will yield a fatal error.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's not just new features all the time, it's also polishing and removing all of the old stuff that should leave the system so that you don't have to maintain it anymore.
Yep.
Very nice.
But, if you're interested, check it out. They have a full change log of all the other less likely to surprise you changes.
Mm-hmm. Very good. And we have a couple of announcements for upcoming BSD conferences. First one is the EuroBSDCon. Early bird registration period is about to end, so be quick about it if you want to attend. Get a bit
well, actually, looking at this
access.
now, the early bird period has ended. So
already, yeah.
This is the punishment you get for not listening to us the last 4 times we told you to register. But hurry up and register because we would love to see you at EuroBSDCon in Romania.
Yes, 2 days of tutorials or Dev Summit and 2 days of talks is something that you shouldn't miss if you're in the area. And in October, we have Meet BSD, October 18th till the 20th is coming up also fast. Hurry up and register.
Yes, early registration has ended there the other day as well, but hurry up and register because we would still like you to come.
Yeah, the schedule will soon be published. We have, from the program committee side, selected a number of speakers, and stay tuned. It will come out soon enough. And the last thing, looking into the next year already, in March, there will be Asia BSDCon 2019. I think we announced this already, but it's better to have it twice. This is March 21st till the 24th.
Yeah, we kept telling people about Euro and Meet BSD, and they seem to have missed the early bird registration. So, start planning to take off a week of time in the late-ish March to come to Tokyo. Pro tip, if you're going to stay a bit extra, come early rather than late, because that's when most other people will be there.
Yeah, exactly. Do a little bit of touristing, explore the city or the surrounding places. It's easy to reach with the high-speed trains. And yeah, Japan is just amazing to see. Especially during Sakura time in the mid of March, which typically starts the whole thing. All right. Yeah.
Yes, on to feedback and questions.
Yep. This week we have a couple of questions, but keep sending them. Send them to feedback@bsdnow.tv. Otherwise, this would be a very empty section here. Yep. So this one from Will starts with kudos and a question. He writes, well, Benedict and Alan, great show. I really appreciate you all and your dedication every week. Well, thank you. The content you pick is great, and I love the Q&A at the end of the show, which this appears in now. Your expertise is profound, and yet you manage to make it accessible and interesting to the noobs. Well, we've been noobs, even if you don't think about it. Yeah, we've been there once, so we might as well give a little bit of our knowledge.
I wasn't a developer a couple of years ago.
Yeah, see, there's a little career ladder we can climb up to slowly but steadily if we keep with the project and and engaged. So while he's not technically a noob, he writes, I appreciate this approach. And he has used Unix since 1991, but only as a regular user, browsing, email, FTP, text manipulation, occasional programs in Perl, C, etc. Since 2005, he's been using a macOS system and become more and more of a power user. And a few years ago, he set up a FreeBSD server with ZFS, excellent, on root and moved my Git repo and rsync backups to that server. There was a learning curve, of course, but it was short and the system has run flawlessly since I set it up. Excellent. A month ago, I bought a used Lenovo ThinkPad T430 and recently installed FreeBSD 11.2 on it as the main operating system with a backup Linux 18.3 instance in case I need something and can't figure it out in FreeBSD. My plan is to learn everything I can about FreeBSD, how it boots, loads, does what it does, halts, etc. I'm reading Kurt McCusick's latest book and studying the internals, and so far it's been a blast. The FreeBSD community is very inviting and helpful. Thank you both for your part in making for a friendly but informed community. Yeah, we're not the only ones contributing to that, but there are other people. But yeah, it's in generally a nice community, a friendly one. In the process of doing my explorations, there have been not a few mishaps. I've blown away my bootloader. Well, we've all been there. Or lost it somewhere. I'm not sure what happened exactly, but it's unpleasant. I've misconfigured my bootloader and not been able to use the correct incantation to get it to boot. I've mistyped kernel and backing up the kernel and had to go hunting for it while reading up on boot 0 config, loader, etc. So my question for the Zen Masters of the BSD, is this. Is there a simple save the loader and its config files here for easy restore type strategy that hardcore developers know about? If so, please share it.
Okay, a couple things. So A, if you're using ZFS boot environments, then you get, you have snapshots of the whole thing no matter what. For the loader, there is a trick. Every time you make install world, it backs up your old loader as loader.old or ZFS loader.old. when the system's booting up, if you want to know more about the process when the system boots up, there's my paper from Asia BSDCon last year, 2016, I think, the 2016 one. Or no, 2017. One of those. Anyway, that covers the process. But basically, the bootstrap that happens before the loader doesn't normally print very much to the screen. But if you trip into it, so if your loader isn't found or isn't working, you'll get dropped to this kind of funny looking prompt with it's like 1 or 2 lines, and it's got it says what it was trying to load that didn't find or whatever, and it just says boot : and nothing. If you put in there the path like /boot/loader.old or boot zfsloader.old, it will load that instead of the file it was trying to load that didn't work. And that will let you boot it up. You can also directly boot into the kernel from there, but remember, in that case, nothing from your loader.conf will be loaded, which means on ZFS, you won't load the ZFS kernel module, and then you won't be able to boot the file system. But yeah, there's that. Because I guess even boot environments might not help you if your loader is broken in the default boot environment. Other useful trick is ZFS boot CFG, which allows you to configure the system to boot off a different boot environment one time only. So you can do the upgrade in a new boot environment and say, on the next boot, try it. And it will erase that setting when it first tries it, so that if it doesn't work, you just power cycle and it'll go back to what your old boot environment was. Which is super helpful.
One-time trial, and if it's not working, then you're back anyway. And if you like it, then you can set it permanently, and you're in the new system. And also, there is also the issue of the boot types. If you are an EFI system or still on the BIOS boot system.
Yeah. So if you're on EFI, you have a whole separate file system that you can copy or whatever. And then if you're on GPT, most of the boot code actually lives in a separate FreeBSD-boot partition, which is easy to create. So the chat room mentions that sounds like NextBoot. Yeah, ZFS boot CFG is like NextBoot, but happens even earlier in the boot and is specific to ZFS. NextBoot doesn't work so well with ZFS because it works by modifying /boot/loader.conf. And because ZFS is so complicated, the bootloader can't write to ZFS, only read, unlike with UFS where it can still write. So ZFS boot config works outside of the file system, so it's a little different. But yes, it is very similar to NextBoot.
Yeah. But overall, I like Will's approach. I mean, I've been doing the dual boot thing when I was learning the BSDs, and at one point I was like, I haven't booted that Linux partition in a while, so I made the switch to FreeBSD. But I still, before that, I could switch back between the two to experience and copy files around, and that's keep doing that. Experiment with the system, try putting it back together if you broke it, and that's the only way we learned it. And sometimes the hard way, sometimes it's frustrating, sometimes it takes a long time, but you will learn something every time and make it better the next time, and over time you will have become the same experienced BSD user as we are. Cool, thanks for that story and the encouragement. And next up is Peter with a fanless computer. Remember, we had an episode about this, or at least a title. He writes, "Hi guys, long-time listener of your show. Thanks for keeping me up to date on BSD happenings. We use BSD internally and absolutely love it. Great. I was watching a recent episode entitled Silence of the Fans and noticed you talking fanless PCs. So fanless PC are my deal here at silentpc.com. We've got a large selection of them with full-size desktop processors, and they all work with FreeBSD. If you ask in the comments, I will even preload and test the hardware compatibility before shipping the system. Anyway, so here's the advertising part, but that's okay. Check us out, and if anyone mentions BSD Now in the comments at checkout, they get a $50 discount on a system. So here's the URL again, silentpc.com/fanless-PCs. Thanks, Peter. Hey, that's great. If that's not BSD support from vendors, that's a cool deal. I will bookmark that one just in case for later. And yeah, next up is Ron. ZFS disk clone or replace or something. This goes BSD Now ZFS Gurus. I mean, I think he means Alan. I have a small fanless box running hardened BSD 11.2. I have 2 disks, and the original install had the 2 disks mirrored. I installed Dragonfly BSD on one disk, ADA0, to test something out, knowing it could boot from the second disk, ADA1, which still had hardened BSD. Okay, experiment over, booted off ADA1 with no problem. However, and as expected, ADA0 is now in trouble. I tried zpool replace, but I got an error message saying that the disk needed to be manually repaired. Gpart shows ADA0 and Gpart showed ADA1, revealed different partitioning schemes as expected. And he took ADA0 offline using the UUID and detached it and thought it would make ADA0 the same as ADA1. So he did a DD of ADA1 to def ADA0. That worked, and both disks are the same now. Then added the new disk, but it did a zpool and zroot of def ADA0 instead of zpool add zroot ADA0 P4. Now he can't detach or take offline the new edition. Oh dear. Yeah. I simply want to remove ADA0, then create a mirror, and any help would be appreciated. So you posted zpool status and zpool, his command that you used.
Yeah, so you've actually got 2 problems there. A, you added the whole disk, not just the partition, so you don't have a spot for the boot code, which is likely to cause you some other issues. And yes, you've added a stripe. So in 11.2, there is no way to undo that. Or is there? So device removal code is very new. This is a feature that just got added to ZFS. I think it might actually be in 11.2. But it's definitely not in 11.1, and it will definitely be in 12.0. So you might have to wait for 12.0, although I think it is actually in 11.2. So you can actually do device evacuation, and we'll copy all the data off ADA0 over to ADA1. However, it's going to do it in such a way that there'll still be a virtual device there, and it'll look weird. Anyway, the correct command, what you wanted was not zpool add, but zpool attach. And that would have upgraded your ADA1 P4 back to a mirror. I'm guessing the only reason you got down from that was you actually did a zpool detach at some point for the device that was having a problem. Anyway, so if you have a new enough version, I think it's zpool remove zroot ADA0, and it will copy all the data that's currently on ADA0 over to ADA1 P4. And then once that's done, you can also you don't want to DD the whole drive like that because you'll copy the ZFS labels and ZFS will think they're both the same disk.
Yeah,
if you just want to mirror the partition layout, Gpart backup ADA1 pipe, Gpart restore ADA0 after you've already destroyed the one on ADA0, and it will just clone the partition layout without copying any of the data. And then you will be able to do this better.
Yeah. If you don't want to wait until the detached feature comes out, then you pretty much have to back up the whole pool and recreate it from scratch. Yeah. Now with the mirror keyboard.
I think the feature is in 11.2 that you're running now, so it should be okay.
Depending on how much need you have for that pool to be ready. But at this point, it's just a stripe, and if one disk dies, all things are gone.
So your biggest problem here is that every file you're writing there is basically being split across the 2 drives. So if one of them dies, you lose half of every file, which is not going to make your pool usable at all. So you definitely do want to try to solve this. And the sooner you do it, the less data there is to relocate.
Yeah.
So yes, there is presentation on how the feature works at BSDCan this year. So the slides and video from that are on at the BSDCan website.
Mm-hmm. And the man page of ZFS or zpool actually have the distinction between zpool add and zpool attach. One is for the mirror, the other one is for
right. Yeah. So attach adds an extra drive to an existing VDEV. So that'll turn, so zpool attach zroot ADA1 P4 ADA0 P4 would have added ADA0 to the mirror. But you did zpool add, which adds a new VDEV, so you added a second stripe.
But now that you know it, you will never do this mistake again. I guess so. Okay, next up is, and last in this feedback and questions part, is Boston with a ZFS record size question. So starting with this. Last time you briefly mentioned tuning and record size in ZFS. I would like to hear your recommendations about it. I have several datasets. In one dataset, there are only mostly about 95% large compressed video files, about 1 gigabyte each. What would be a good record size for this dataset? 1 megabyte? Bigger? Smaller?
Probably 1 megabyte. Going bigger requires some custom tuning, and I don't have much experience with it, so I wouldn't recommend it just yet. But yes, 1 megabyte will save you about 7% space on the metadata. Instead of, because when you write 1 megabyte block, you don't have to actually instead write 8 128K blocks and all their metadata and the metadata that points to them and the metadata that points to them all the way up. So you can do a relatively significant savings by, saving terabytes of data on 1 megabyte records instead of 128K records.
Yep. Okay. So that's video files. And in another data set, there are pictures and videos from my mobile devices, size ranging from 2 megabytes, which is the average JPEG video or photo, to 1 gigabyte or more, some 4K video files. What would be good record size for this data set?
There's not much downside to using the 1 megabyte records for any files.
For the whole pool?
If the file's only 128K, it's actually only going to use a 128K record for it anyway. You're just setting the maximum record size, not the minimum. Yeah. The times when you definitely want smaller ones are files where you're going to make changes to the middle of the file. If you're going to be changing the middle of the file, you want, if you're going to make a 4K change to the middle of a file, if you have a 1 megabyte record size, it's going to have to read the whole 1 megabyte record, modify the 4K somewhere in it, and then write that whole 1 megabyte record. And if you then modify the next 4K too far apart, where it's a separate transaction group, then it's going to read that whole megabyte again, change it, and write it out. And it can make your snapshots grow a lot faster and so on. So for things like databases and VMs, you don't want a large record size. Even though if your VM's a giant VMDK file or something, even though it's one big file, because the changes you're making to it are random and 4K usually, you want the smaller record size there. But anything you're archiving, it's totally safe to just do 1 megabyte records for everything.
Yep. And yeah, these are the benefits, or what he writes to correctly tune the record size. I mean, there's not much tuning to be had. It's just these two different types of, that Alan mentioned. Either you're changing within a file or you make large changes to the file itself. I keep it at 1 megabyte and only for databases tune it. So I have that as a default set for the whole pool. All right, but it's good to know that, and that's pretty much covering all the show that we have for this week. And again, if you have something, a blog post, an article about any BSD that you might find interesting that we should cover, send it to feedback@bsdnow.tv, or your questions that you have about any aspect of BSD usage, and we'll try to answer it in next week's episode or in a future episode, whichever is coming faster. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.
See you next time.